My people, today we mark a turning point in our history. With India, we have signed a $1.2 billion deal to give our farmers the tools to feed themselves and to make Burkina Faso truly independent.
For generations, the name Burkina Faso conjured images of hardship, drought-stricken fields, empty markets, families struggling under the weight of a fragile economy. News headlines dwelled on our political instability, poverty, and hunger. Ours was the story of a nation always bracing for the next crisis, rarely celebrating progress. But on a single August morning in Ouagadougou, that narrative shifted. In a government hall packed with local leaders, journalists, and Indian diplomats, President Ibrahim Traoré stepped forward. With cameras rolling, he announced a $1.2 billion agricultural deal, a sum nearly unimaginable in the country's recent history. More than just a number, it was a symbol of hope, sovereignty, and self-reliance. Crowds gathered outside, chanting, waving flags, and holding homemade signs adorned with pictures of tractors, the newest icons of national pride. Social media lit up as images of tractors and smiling farmers replaced the all-too-familiar stories of struggle. For the first time in years, the mood was not just hopeful, it was electric. The excitement wasn't only about machines and technology. To the people of Burkina Faso, a tractor represented something deeper. For decades, we were told we'd always be dependent on foreign aid, imported food, and charity. Now, for the first time, the government was betting boldly on its own people and on the land itself. In the city and countryside alike, the reaction was the same. At last, we were taking our destiny into our own hands. A tractor was no longer just a piece of metal. It had become a metaphor for progress, for pride, for the possibility of a future where Burkina Faso stood tall on the world stage. Farmers, youth, and ordinary citizens all felt it. For them, this deal wasn't just about crops or jobs. It was a promise. We will not always be dependent. We can and will stand on our own. Outside Burkina Faso, the news sent ripples across continents. Western analysts described the deal as unexpected. Some called it a gamble, others a bold stroke of leadership. In India, the mood was triumphant, a sign that the country was growing into a respected global partner. Across Africa, regional neighbors eyed the deal with both admiration and unease. Would Burkina Faso's new capacity disrupt local food markets? Would this trigger a broader shift in trade or even competition among Sahel nations? But the biggest impact was geopolitical. This was not simply about tractors and fields. It was about a nation choosing to chart its own course, challenge old stereotypes, and step into a new era with ambition. Agriculture has always been at the core of Burkina Faso's identity. Over 70% of the population survives on farming. For generations, families worked the land with hand tools and wooden plows, relying on the unpredictable rains of the Sahel. The work was grueling, the yields small, and the threat of hunger always close. Mechanization changes everything. Where one person might spend days plowing an acre, a tractor does it in an hour. Faster planting and harvesting mean less waste, larger harvests, and a shift from subsistence to commercial farming. What once took a family weeks now takes a machine an afternoon. For the smallholder farmer, a tractor is not just a convenience, it is the key to prosperity. Land that once barely fed a household can now produce a surplus, which can be sold in markets, paying for school, medicine, and a better life. In this way, the tractor becomes a ladder, lifting families out of the cycle of poverty and dependence. Unlike earlier, failed attempts at mechanization in Africa, where machines arrived without training, spare parts, or support, this deal is different. The partnership with India includes not just equipment, but entire systems, training, programs, workshops for repairs, service centers for spare parts. This holistic approach gives the project a real chance at long-term success. India's commitment: don't just deliver the machine. Teach the people, build the support network, make it last. That's the difference. And that's why hope is running high, not only in government offices, but in the fields where these machines will make the most impact. The ripple effects of this deal extend far beyond the fields. For many young people, farming once carried a stigma. It was backbreaking, low-status work. The best and brightest often left rural villages, risking dangerous journeys to cities or abroad, seeking opportunity. The New Deal has the power to change this. Tractors and farm technology require skilled operators, mechanics, and logistics workers. As harvests grow, so does the demand for transporters, warehouse operators, and food processors. A single tractor supports a chain of jobs, from the person at the wheel, to the mechanic in the workshop, to the trader in the marketplace. For the first time, young people are beginning to see agriculture not as a last resort, but as a respected modern profession. Operating a machine, repairing technology, or managing a farm are roles that inspire pride and keep ambition at home. Burkina Faso has long relied on imports for staples like wheat, rice, and maize. When world prices rose, hunger followed. Food security was more than an economic issue, it was political. No country is truly independent if it cannot feed itself. With tractors and modern farming, the government has set ambitious new targets, such as harvesting 6,000 tons of wheat in a single season. For ordinary families, that means fewer empty plates and more full bellies. For the nation, it means sovereignty, because food independence is political independence. Young people across the country now use social media to celebrate the tractor, not just as a machine, but as a symbol of national freedom, the freedom to stay, to build, and to thrive in their home, land. The deal with India marks a profound shift in the geopolitics of the Sahel and Africa at large. For decades, France dominated the region through colonial legacies, aid, and military presence. Frustration grew as promises of security and prosperity failed to materialize. New players entered the scene. Russia brought military aid, China built roads, but none addressed the daily struggle to put food on the table. India's approach is different. By investing in agriculture, India touches the heart of ordinary life. Unlike weapons or roads, a tractor makes a difference. You can see by the next harvest. It is aid with dignity, tools, not charity. For India, it's also strategic. Investing in food production in Africa builds partners for the future, partners who will support it on the world stage and in times of global food crisis. Western nations watch uneasily. If Burkina Faso and India succeed, it will reshape the model of African development, shifting it away from dependency and toward mutual partnership. The promise is immense, but the risks are real. Machines can't transform agriculture alone. People do. Farmers must be trained to operate and repair equipment. Technicians must be available in every village. Service centers, promised by India, will need to reach deep into the countryside. Infrastructure is another hurdle. More crops mean nothing if they can't be transported, stored, or processed. New roads, warehouses, and food factories must be built. Already the government has begun work on tomato factories and wheat mills, but much more is needed to support the surge in production. Corruption poses the greatest threat. If tractors end up in the hands of elites or well-connected farmers, the project could fail. The promise of change must reach the smallholder, the ordinary family, and the forgotten village. Without transparency, fairness, and real accountability, P will turn to anger. This tractor deal is not just Burkina Faso's story. Across Africa, millions of people face the same struggles: low productivity, food insecurity, and dependence on Western aid. If Burkina Faso can break the cycle through South-South partnership, it sets a model for others: Mali, Niger, Ghana, Chad. In the coming years, leaders across Africa will feel pressure from their own people. If they can do it in Ouagadougou, why not here? For Western nations, the stakes are high. Their model, aid in exchange for influence, dependency instead of partnership, faces its most serious challenge yet. The $1.2 billion tractor deal is a philosophical shift as much as an economic one. For too long, development was a story of dependency, with Western donors dictating terms. This deal is a declaration of agency. It says, we choose our partners, we set our priorities, we claim our sovereignty. This new model is not perfect. Training must be widespread, infrastructure must be built, corruption must be fought. But the example stands. Africa can define its own path, build on mutual respect, and rise by the strength of its own hands. No change is without struggle. The road ahead is uncertain. But as fields fill with wheat and maize, as villages hum with activity, as youth find work and dignity at home, something fundamental is shifting. Years from now, when children study the history of Burkina Faso, they may look back at this moment as the beginning. The tractors may be made of metal and fuel, but they carry with them seeds of pride, agency, and hope. Already, the effects of this new model are spreading. Neighboring governments are debating their own partnerships and investment strategies. Social media across the continent pulses with the excitement of possibility, memes, stories, and videos showing proud farmers, bountiful harvests, and thriving communities. From Dakar to Nairobi, the call is the same. We want our own revolution. If Burkina Faso succeeds, it will not only feed its people, it will feed the spirit of a continent hungry for dignity, progress, and true independence. This story is not yet complete. Obstacles remain: climate change, political challenges, insecurity. But the message is clear. The era of dependence is ending. The age of agency is dawning. To the next generation, you are not just inheritors of struggle, you are the sowers of new seeds, the builders of a proud and self-reliant Africa. Let this be your harvest. The shockwaves from Burkina Faso's bold decision with India have traveled far beyond its own fields. Across Africa, policymakers, entrepreneurs, and young people are watching, debating, and dreaming. In rural villages from Mali to Ghana, farmers gather to ask, if tractors can change life in Burkina Faso, why not here? On university campuses, students analyze the partnership as a new blueprint for African agency, one that rejects old dependency and welcomes true partnership. This new model is not just about crops and machines. It's about dignity, self-worth, and the realization that Africa's future is not to be written in foreign boardrooms, but in African hands. As leaders in other nations contemplate their next move, the Burkina Faso example offers both a challenge and a call to action. Will you take the risk? Will you invest in your own? As the dust settles and tractors begin to plow the fertile red earth, a new season dawns. The vision planted by this deal is bigger than any harvest. It is a vision of an Africa that is united, empowered, and unafraid to choose its own destiny. Let this be the beginning, not the end. Let every young person see these fields and know the chains of dependency can be broken, the cycles of poverty can be ended, and a proud, thriving Africa can be built. One courageous step, one partnership, one harvest at a time. Months pass, and the promises of the tractor deal are put to the test. Across Burkina Faso, the dry season yields to rain, and engines roar to life in fields once silent and fallow. Old farmers stand beside young men and women, their hands guiding the new machines, their faces shaded by the hope of a changing future. For the first time in memory, harvests are not measured in barely enough, but in surplus, enough to fill markets, enough to store for lean times, enough to share with neighbors. Children eat more than one meal a day. School attendance rises as families no longer need every pair of hands to scrape the earth for survival. With every sack of millet and wheat, every crate of tomatoes sent to market, the old story of poverty gives way to a new one, that Africa can feed itself, that dignity and prosperity are possible, and that the seed of change, when nurtured with courage, bears real fruit. Farmers from across West Africa arrive to witness this miracle. Delegations from Mali, Niger, and Ghana walk the green fields, learning, asking, dreaming. The fields of Burkina Faso have become a living classroom, proof that transformation is possible, that revolution can begin with a plough. And as the sun sets over the golden harvest, one truth resounds from every corner of the land. This is only the beginning. The harvest is proof. The future is now. As word of Burkina Faso's transformation spreads, the continent begins to stir. News outlets across Africa report on the thriving markets of Ouagadougou, the bustling new training centers, and the smiling faces of children who know hunger only as a memory. Videos of modern tractors at work go viral on social media, inspiring songs, art, and debate. The old idea that Africa cannot is challenged in every language, on every street corner. In rural villages from Senegal to Kenya, elders gather with the youth to discuss what they have seen and heard. A question hangs in the air. If Burkina Faso can do this, why not us? In universities, students organize debates about sovereignty, technology, and the power of partnership. Leaders in other governments, once skeptical, now send delegations to Ouagadougou, no longer out of charity, but out of respect and curiosity. The agricultural revolution becomes a rallying point for Pan-African unity. Cross-border cooperatives form. A network of young African engineers trained in Burkina Faso fans out across the continent, bringing knowledge and ambition wherever they go. Each new field cultivated, each new workshop built, chips away at the legacy of dependency, replacing it with a new ethos. We build, we innovate, we decide. For the first time in generations, African nations are not waiting for solutions, they are becoming the solution. Burkina Faso's story has become Africa's story, a shared journey toward dignity, agency, and pride. In the wake of Burkina Faso's bold leap, the ripple effects extend far beyond its borders. Neighboring nations watch the fields of Burkina flourish, not just with crops, but with confidence and new possibilities. Regional leaders begin to rethink old assumptions, shifting focus from external dependency to self-driven growth. Young Africans across the continent, from Lagos to Lusaka, start to dream new dreams. Social media explodes with images of youth working on mechanized farms, building irrigation systems, coding agricultural apps, and opening agribusiness startups. Where migration to Europe once seemed like the only option, staying home to build something meaningful becomes the new ambition. African universities and technical schools update their curricula to include hands-on agricultural training and engineering. Partnerships with India and other global South allies deepen, offering scholarships and technical exchanges. A wave of young professionals returns from abroad, eager to contribute to their homelands, motivated not by pity, but by pride. Governments inspired by Burkina Faso's success launch their own agricultural reforms. Regional collaborations form to share technology, seed banks, and weather data. New alliances emerge, focused on food security and local innovation instead of charity. The media, too, changes its story. No longer is Africa simply portrayed as a continent of need and fragility. Stories now highlight resilience, invention, and leadership. Documentaries, podcasts, and books chronicle the new era, the era of African agency and determination. And as each season brings a bigger harvest, a new generation grows up knowing that sovereignty is more than a word. It is a practice, a living reality. The tractor becomes not just a tool, but a symbol etched into the nation's consciousness. With our hands and our minds, we shape our destiny. As Burkina Faso's fields become models of abundance, the vision of unity spreads across Africa like a promise on the wind. The echoes of change resonate from the bustling markets of Lagos to the quiet fields of rural Ethiopia. Each nation, inspired by Burkina Faso's courage, begins to ask the same question. If they can, why not us? Policymakers from Senegal to Kenya convene in new forums, not to plead for foreign aid, but to share homegrown solutions, drip irrigation systems tailored to the Sahel, indigenous seed varieties exchanged across borders, digital platforms connecting rural farmers with urban markets. Trade routes, once stifled by bureaucracy, come alive as nations sign new agreements to move food, machinery, and ideas freely across the continent. Youth organizations and civil society groups seize the momentum, launching Grow Africa initiatives that celebrate not just agriculture, but also education, health, and entrepreneurship. Communities plant trees, build water catchments, and organize literacy campaigns, each effort a stone in the foundation of a stronger Africa. African artists, poets, and musicians channel the spirit of self-determination into their work. Songs of hope and unity fill the airwaves, murals depicting farmers and engineers appear on city walls, and literature celebrates the dignity of the land. Culture and progress walk hand in hand, shaping a new continental identity. On the international stage, Africa's new voice is impossible to ignore. At summits and in parliaments, African leaders speak with a confidence born of progress. They advocate not just for their own nations, but for a shared African vision, demanding fair trade, equal partnerships, and respect for their sovereignty. The world, used to a divided Africa, now faces a continent awakening to its own power. But the journey is far from over. Burkina Faso's story, your story, reminds all Africans that the harvest is not just for one nation, but for the many who dare to believe in a future they can shape themselves. As months turn into years, the impact of Burkina Faso's agricultural revolution becomes unmistakable. Village after village transforms. Children with full stomachs attend schools under shade trees. Mothers gather to exchange new recipes for surplus grains and vegetables. Old worries about drought, hunger, or forced migration slowly begin to fade. The first harvests are celebrated with joy and pride. In towns across Burkina Faso, community festivals honor both tradition and innovation. Elders, who once lamented the loss of young people to cities or foreign shores, now witness a new generation returning home, eager to build, to farm, to create. The story of the tractors is told and retold, not as a tale of technology alone, but as a symbol of what can happen when a people believe in their own power. Rural radio stations broadcast interviews with women who became mechanics, with youth who started farm co-ops, with elders who learned new methods, but kept old wisdom alive. Every broadcast is a lesson. Hope is grown, not given. Across Africa, similar stories multiply. Ghana experiments with cocoa cooperatives built on the same principles. Kenya invests in solar irrigation, inspired by Burkina Faso's boldness. In Senegal, young engineers design affordable equipment for small farmers, collaborating with peers from Nigeria and South Africa.